Hey nerdy knitters, in this video we're looking at 5 different ways to work double decreases. Instead of decreasing 2 stitches into 1, we'll be decreasing 3 stitches into 1. 5 different ways. Stick around to catch all of those, and if you want to jump to any point in the video, use the timestamp links in the video description box down below. A regular single decrease takes 2 stitches and turns it into 1 stitch. A double decrease takes 3 stitches and turns it into 1 stitch. This is most often used in lace patterns where you've got lots of yarn overs and patternings and increasing and decreasing. Today, let's look at 5 ways we can do that. Let's start with the most simple, a knit 3 together. If you know a knit 2 together, instead of just knitting 1, we insert into the second stitch and the first and work them together. That's a knit 2 together. You can do the same thing with 3 stitches, but instead we will start over here. There's our third stitch. We insert it into that and those first 2 stitches. Wrap our yarn to knit, pull that through, and we've taken 3 stitches and turned them into 1. And you can see the third stitch is the one that ends up on top, so it slants off to the right. So that one is pretty simple. Next, we have the S2KP2. It's a lot of letters and numbers. So all that means is S2 is slip 2. Now we're not slipping them one at a time. We are slipping them right together. And when you slip for a decrease, you're slipping them as if to knit. Remember, this is a purlwise slip. We're leaving the stitch mount exactly the same. We're inserting just like we're going to purl and slipping the stitch. To slip knitwise, you insert like you're going to knit and slip the stitch. And you can see it changes the stitch mount. Now the left leg is in the front and the right leg is in the back. A standard stitch is mounted like this in the Western tradition. Right leg in the front, left leg in the back. So we're going to slip 2 stitches at the same time, knitwise. So insert into that second one and the first, slip them together. There's our S2, and then the K in that abbreviation, that means knit. And then P2 means pass those 2 stitches, the ones we slipped, right over that stitch. And that is an S2KP2. It's also known as a central double decrease because when you look at it, you can see it doesn't slant to the right or the left. It keeps that center stitch in the middle. That is the S2KP. And then we have the SK2P. So what does that one mean? More letters and numbers. So we just have to break it down into steps. SK2P, S means slip, so we're slipping just 1 because there's no number after it, and it's a decrease, so I'm slipping knitwise. Then it says K2, so I'm knitting 2 stitches together. There's my knit 2 together, and then that P means pass, so I'm taking that slip stitch and passing it over. That is an SK2P, and you can see that one leans off to the left. There's also one more way you can work a left leaning decrease. Like the knit 3 together, it's the same thing, but we're going to knit them through the back loop. So I insert into all 3 of those. This one can be a bit tricky, but we're inserting into the back legs of the stitch, wrapping and pulling our yarn through. And now those stitches are twisted because we worked them through the back loop, but you can see it leans off to the left, like the SK2P right there. And that would be another option that would mirror the knit 3 together, but it does, if you can see right at the base of that stitch, it's twisted instead of a normal open stitch. This one's open, left leg there, right leg there. This one is twisted closed. So that is 4 ways to work. Let's work another row and I will show you how to work one more double decrease. All right, let's work one more. I'm going to slip 1 knitwise. I'm going to knit 1. I'm going to pass that slip stitch over. But now I'm going to bring this stitch back to my left needle, and I'm going to take the next stitch and pass that over and put it back on this needle. We now have another double decrease, and we can see that the top stitch leans off to the right. So that's 5 ways to work double decreases. Now let's get a bit nerdy and look at the slant of these decreases and why they slant off in that direction. Let me finish this row and we can look at that. With a decrease, the slant of the decrease is dependent on where the needle is inserted. Down here is our knit 3 together. And when we worked that, we inserted our needle into that 3rd stitch. And that's the stitch that ended up on top. So that provides the slant to the right. We inserted right there and worked them together. This stitch ended up on top, leans off to the right. The next one we worked was the S2KP2 right here. And you can see that one doesn't slant. That's probably the most invisible. There's no slant to it. Let's take a look at why that ended up like that. Let's work another S2KP2 or central double decrease. We slip 2. So my needle's inserted into this 2nd stitch right there. Remember that, because this is the stitch that's going to end up on top of our decrease. We insert and we slip. We knit this one, and then we pass those slipped stitches over. That's where we get the slant. When you're slipping stitches and passing them over, that shows you which direction they're going to be. And remember, we inserted into that 2nd stitch, and that's the stitch that ended up on top. Let's look at the SK2P. That is this one right here. You can see that slipped stitch that's passed over provides that slant. If you remember, the SK2P was slip a stitch knitwise. Remember, we're decreasing, so we slip knitwise. And then we worked these 2 together, which if I had just done a knit 2 together, you can see it slants off to the right like a knit 2 together, but that slipped stitch goes over that and covers it up, and now it slants off to the left. So if you want your decreases to slant in a specific direction, that's what you have to remember, is where that needle is inserted, that provides the slant of the decrease. And what about that last one we worked, that slip 1, knit 1, pass it over, move it over again, pass another one over. That final stitch that was passed over, where is that one? Right here. That final stitch that passed over to the right. So that provides the slant of that decrease. So there are 5 ways to work a double decrease. If you like to get a bit nerdy with your knitting, click the subscribe button down below.